everyone, thank you once again for tuning into the Iconist podcast. As always, I am one of your hosts, Barry 3D Carter, and on my side is the man, the myth, the legend. Oh, I almost forgot. Hey, my best friend, the one and only Mr.
Rod C. Good day, good afternoon, good morning to wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode Iconist podcast. We got some fun for you today. We're gonna talk about
Rod.
somebody.
Let him know, Rod.
Who are we talking about? We talking about G.I. Robot. G.I. Robot. Like, that's what we're talking about. Who's that? We're gonna find out. Stay tuned. Let's go.
So, yes, we're going to talk about G.I. Robot, and as Rod likes to say,
Earth maketh the man. That's what we're doing right now.
The man. So remember, first you got to support the books, what we talk about on the show. You keep that going. That's the lifeblood of everything we've got talking about on this show. So you got to go out there and support WoW Comics out in Kitchener. And you also got to check out Chex Wings out in Montreal. Unfortunately, the doors have finally closed on A Hero's Tale out in Cambridge. So thank you very much, Andrew, once again. Hope you, looking forward to see what you do next. And you say maybe you'll be back in the future. So fingers crossed. On top of that, we are part of the Subculture Podcast Network. So our podcast, along with a couple other ones, please check us out there. Check out those shows. Let them know you heard about them on the Iconist podcast. You want to see where I'm going to be at, you can check out my website, barry3d.com. Once again, that's barry3d.com. And you'll find all the links to this show, where I'm going to be doing my stand-up and where I'm touring around. Come out and say hi. Let me know if you heard about me on the Iconist podcast. All right. Go to your comedy club and say, you bring in Barry Carter. There we go. And you can check that out. On top of it, too, we also are part of Podbean. All right. So we use Podbean for our hosting, the hosting for all our audio. And you can find our podcast anywhere from iTunes to Spotify and all that stuff. And then you too, if you want to have a podcast, you too can go to Podbean. And ours show is literally iconist.podbean.com. Okay. Rod, where can we find you?
As I say, you can find me on the World Wide Web. You can find me on Instagram at Mr. I keep doing this. Why am I doing it lately? My goodness. At Mr. Rod C. You can find me on twitch.tv/DJ Rod C. You can find me on Twitter at DJ Rod C1. That's DJ Rod C1. Let's go.
Excellent. And as always, if you're looking for to do anything and you need a graphic artist, there's only one man and one man you should reach out to alone. And that man is
J Bird Digital Art.
Mr. Jason Reese, J Bird Digital Arts. You tell him that you heard about him on the Iconist podcast, and he will give you a discount on the work. Come on, save that money. Okay. Now we heard what we're talking about. We're talking about G.I. Robot from DC Comics. And why we're doing this? Because we're doing Remembrance Month. Least we forget. So we're remembering all the troops. And of course, instead of giving them a day, we're giving them a month. I know Black History has a month, but it's in February. So if you live in Canada, there's no parades. Just a lot of hot chocolate. Okay. I'm calling it. It's true, Rod. It's true. You're not doing. There's Caravana. That's in in the summer, and we got Black History Month in February, the shortest month. Okay, yeah. See me on stage. We can talk. Cool beans. So we are talking about G.I. Robot from DC Comics, and G.I. Robot made his first appearance in Star Spangled War issue number 101 back in, say, February, March of 1962. Now, this was created by, once again, Robert Kanigher. So Robert Kanigher has written a lot of books. He's talked about, the past couple of weeks, I think we've touched on a lot of the stuff that he's done overall. And the artist was Ross Andro. So he was one of the artists. And then Mike Esposito was another artist. But Ross Andro was the artist with Robert Kanigher. And just to kind of give you a flashback here, Robert Kanigher was born June 18th of 1950. Gemini.
Okie dokie.
In New York City. And he was born to Romanian Jewish parents. And he's worked on a lot of stuff. So he's worked on All-American Men of War, The Flash, GI Combat, Metal Men, Our Army at War, Our Fighting Forces, Sergeant Rock, Star Spangled War stories, and Wonder Woman. And what he's really known for outside of the war comics, besides what I mentioned, is he was the one that really made the first appearance and wrote that first appearance of Flash in DC Showcase back in the day. And I'm talking Flash, like Barry Allen Flash, not Jay Garrick Flash. So that was the Silver Age, bringing in that whole era. So there you go. And I mean, he's worked in a lot of stuff, right? He's, Kanigher's earliest works were such titles as a Fox feature syndicates in Blue Beetle, okay, where he created the Bouncer, MLJ/Archie Comics, which you heard us talk about when we were talking about another property, and we had Larry Reckless-Otto on here talking about all that, about the Mighty Crusaders. So this is where his name keeps coming up all the time, and we just had to put a spotlight on that. So there we go. So G.I. Robot came around. Here's where he is now. What was the influence? I mean, Robert, was doing so much for creating a lot of these stories where war books that's carried on up to now, and we will see G.I. Robot making his debut in the Creature Commandos that will be coming up in the near future. But we're going to get back to, and there was multiples. I think there was 6 different G.I. Robots, but we're going back to 1 OG day 1. Okay, there we go. Now, Rod, did you take a peek and read any of this stuff at the time?
I have. So GI Robot, again, when you mentioned that, I was like, interesting. GI Robot, never heard of it. Let's do some research. So checking it up, read it up, and you know what? It was a very interesting read, in a sense of trying to fuse. I guess the best way I can think of it is trying to infuse a futuristic George Jetson robot in time of war, back in that time. So that was quite interesting. And I was like, okay, I see what they're doing. When you started off, you'll see that this was a secret experiment, basically just trying a technique of trying to, save lives. And, I can understand you don't want the soldiers to get hurt. So they basically came up with an opportunity to say, we're going to have an advanced android who's going to be going out into the field, but we need some testing. So this is how the whole story kind of starts off. So I was like, okay, that's a nice twist, a nice little futuristic kind of concept. And I'm like, okay, I liked it. We'll get into it, but I like the way it was starting off. What did you think of it?
No, it was interesting. I mean, for the time, I mean, listen was way from back in when he made his first appearance. I'm just looking at it. So back in 1962. 62. And in this present day, what are we talking about this present day? In this present day, we're talking about, Chat GPT. We're talking about AI. We're talking about automation, robots, drones. These are terms that you hear now in 2024, borderline 2025. And here back in 1962, they're talking about robots and androids back then. And that was the sci-fi. Now, once again, science fiction is just things that have not been invented yet. Henceforth, Star Trek, their flip-up phones, and you look at Motorola when they kind of did their Motorola Razr back in the day, and that was very Star Trek-ish, if that's a word. So these are just things that just haven't been invented yet. So here we are. We've all seen the movie Terminator. Or if you haven't seen it, you know about it. We all know the dun 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 dun. You all know the music. We all hear it. So this goes back to 1962, where they're saying, hey, the Army currently uses drones, remote control drones to, run missions, so forth. This is almost back then, and it's always been touched on, I think, in different avenues, but it's interesting that it was back in 1962. So the Army turns around, and you got Professor Zurin that turns around and makes an artificial intelligence, AI, and makes GI Robot. Now, like GI was always a general issue or government issue. There we go. GI stand for government issue. Joe was just a name that they used for people in the Army, right? Yeah. Just a general term. So they call them, it's pretty much government issued robot. That's what it comes down to. Of course, made by the Pentagon as a secret project to go out there. And they did a lot of testing with this first robot, behind the scenes at the Pentagon. And then they wanted to get some field testing done. And this is where things, come to life, go wrong as the story happens, and gets into a whole aspect of the war that was so out there that it's eye-opening at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, you got the Army, they start off, and then they bring in the very first soldier. Okay, and his name is escaping me right now, but he was an Army Ranger. So he's a United States Army Ranger who they called in, and it's through his point of view, his narrative, working with GI Robot to take him on that very first field mission. And it was just the two of them, not a whole platoon, because it was a secret. So that being, don't tell us so. So they call in the Army Ranger, which is interesting. So right now we know Pentagon. There's a scientist. The scientist is a military scientist. Made the GI Robot, put everything in there, and he's got to be told verbal commands. He has to be told jump, take cover, to do things. And it's also understanding the logic. So it's a learning curve, like AI. And I think it's Jay. Was his first name Joe? Was his first the first guy? I think he was Joe.
Which one? The
soldier.
The soldier? Yeah. Let me just see. Because it doesn't. Where? I thought it was Reed.
Yeah, I read it in the comic book, and now I'm trying to remember. I think it's Joe, like his actual name, not the robot. I'm talking the person he was paired up with.
Let's see.
Is it Joe or Mac? One of the two. There's so many names. You can let me know. I'll keep on blabbing.
Yeah, keep going.
Right. So and this is a round table discussion. You guys know that. So they turn around and they call this Army Ranger in. So once again, as an Army Ranger, he's got a certain set of skill types. That's very tangible. An Army Ranger has their training. They've got where they specialize in. And we've seen the Rangers before. If you want to know who is an Army Ranger, okay, let's look at Stalker from G.I. Joe. He is an Army Ranger, right? And that's where it kind of breaks down a little bit more. So, if I had to look up Army Rangers right now while Rod's looking that up, we'll see and just give you a fleshed out idea of what, an Army Ranger does, what they can do, and it's like, Army Rangers are very similar to the Navy SEALs, I guess, somewhat. I mean, one versus the other, right? And I'm just looking, once again, more notes all over the place. So the United States Army Rangers are an elite U.S. Army personnel who have served in any unit which has held the official designation of Ranger. The term is commonly used to include graduates of the Ranger School. Even if they've never served in a Ranger unit, the vast majority of Ranger School graduates never serve in Ranger units and are considered Ranger qualified. Okay, that's interesting, but Rangers are known to be, as opposed to infantry that kind of jumps right in, Rangers are, have airborne training, so they're jumping from planes and doing the whole parachute jump in. They're running like solo missions. You see them in the water, in the bushes. They're out there doing long-term recon. That's their, I guess, range of expertise. No pun intended. Weapon wise, they have and they go back. They got a history. Like Army Rangers go all the way back to 1639, from when you want to figure that whole thing was started. So they're the rough and tough. They're they're the rough and tough soldiers. They're maybe not your Green Berets, and that's a different thing. I'm not in the Army. Don't hold it against me. I'm just telling you, Army Rangers, right? They recon, blah, blah, blah. That's what I know from them. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that in a bad way. It's just, if anyone's a full Army buff, you can let us know in the comments below about that. So, yeah, the Rangers are just, let's say, they're a bunch of bad men. And I mean that in a good way. Thank God they're on the other side. There we go.
There you go.
And these are the people that fight for our freedom. So this is what it is. Did you find his name, Rod?
Yeah, so it's Ranger Unit Corporal named Mac, and that was the scenario. It's basically like in the first few panels is the only time he's been referred to as Mac, and then maybe later on, Reed is on the second IP, so which we'll get to later. That's why I was saying Reed. I was mixing up with
right.
So the only time you really call is Mac, and then when you realize later on, when they're out in the field, as Barry says, the robot, the android, is really voice command kind of prompting. So in reality, Mac is the only one who's talking. Mac is the one who's mainly like saying it's coming from his perspective. So Mac is the one who's really talking. So that's why we're not going to really see his name being referred back to, because no one is really calling him back Mac. That's why it was a little harder to remember. That's the reason why.
Thank you very much. So that's the truth there. So Matt comes in there, he meets the robot, he gets this mission from his commanding officer, he gets explained to it, and he kind of says some things like, hey, how when I turn around and say, duck and cover, how is he gonna operate? And of course, GI robot jumps up and just pushes him down. Now keep in mind, he's steel and wires. It's heavy. He's heavy. GI robot is heavy. He's lying on top of Mac. Mac's like, can't breathe. And they go to kind of do their first training mission. So once again, as a ranger, he doesn't need much backup. The question is what's Mac's backstory? Is Mac, is he so qualified and they have faith in him that they're bringing him in? Clearly, if you're working with a project of that caliber, you can't be a screw up in the army. You're not going to be Beetle Bailey.
Right.
Exactly. You're going to have to be on top of your P's and Q's. So you're going to get the best of the best to work on a secret project. You don't give it to the runt or the dunce of the group, right?
No Gomer Pyle. Not a Gomer Pyle. Got it.
He's not a Gomer Pyle. Exactly. So now Mac has to come. Mac has to be who he is in this top ranking. And we know we hear his rank. So he gets out there. He goes for a field test. He goes for a run. So the two of them start off, they're on a plane, they jump out the plane after they kind of get through some little hijinks. Okay. So you can tell there's a little comedy part to it because every time he says something, it could be interpreted somewhere else.
Right.
And once, how the doctor programmed him to operate, we're hearing certain phrases and what Mac would say, hearing certain phrases, he might not phrase it the same way. So GI Robot has been trained to understand gunfire, different types of weapon fire, the sounds they make, the lights he might see and so forth. So this way he can react to those situations autonomously. So he gets in there, their whole adventure, they start off, they're off some like island somewhere and they're just going to run a mission just to put them through the paces in the field. Jump out the plane. Sure enough. So Mac jumps out and he realizes that he's got to call back because the robot's just going to stand there. He's not going to understand the green light is saying safe to jump. So Mac has to turn around and is like, jump. GI Robot jumps out the plane. So GI Robot doesn't talk, but he jumps out the plane. Okay, pull your chute. Pull the chute. And Mac pulls the chute. GI Robot pulls the chute. Okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Mac gets attacked by a reasonable facsimile of a pterodactyl.
Interesting.
60s world. Fabulous time.
We're dipping into the savage lands. That's all I'm just thinking.
Right? Okay.
We're on another edge of the savage lands. That's how I'm looking at it. But I'm just saying.
I agree with you because that's the first thing I saw. That's what I thought. So he gets out there, gets attacked by a pterodactyl. His chute gets ripped. First he gets attacked and he gets grabbed by the pterodactyl, and the pterodactyl's about to fly away with him. And Mac turns around and he's like, shoot. And GI Robot just pulls out his gun. You did something. You took down your first kill, so to speak. You killed this pterodactyl. My chute's ripped. I'm in free fall. This is the biggest free fall of my life. Bye-bye. And then he's like, GI Robot, catch me. GI Robot turns around and swings and angles his parachute and catches Mac and then grabs him firmly as a robot should, because it doesn't have the concept of some things are more fragile than others and does not know its own strength. He didn't say that, but he grabbed him so firmly that Mac couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Again, too heavy, too tight. Ay.
Ay, caramba. So he grabs him, holds on to him, and he's like, please. And then he turns around and he's like,
and realize what he's saying.
Up. Yeah. He's like, Robot, you got to open up. So once again, GI Robot says, open, thinking as open fire, lets go of Mac, grabs his gun and starts shooting in the air. I guess that, this, for whatever reason, and Mac starts to fall and grabs onto his foot and holds on as they are still descending all the way down to the ground.
Okay. Hilarious. No, it's hilarious. It just basically he starts to realize. Here's the good thing about it. He's realizing that he has to be very cautious of what he says. because again, all he just said, open up, give me some breathing room. Kind of, you're holding me too tight. Open up, okay. Open up your arms, okay. Oh snap! What did I just say? Yeah. So is the great thing about it that Mac was able to hold on as they, descended to where they were going. So basically, they were trying to land a certain place, but because of the pterodactyl and all that kind of fun stuff, they got sidetracked into some island, which was okay. We'll find out more. There's more surprises coming down the way. But here's a wonderful thing. When Mac landed, Mac said the first thing he said, "Yo, my goodness, thanks for saving my life, Joe. Thanks." And then he caught himself because he said he put his hand out to say, "Yo, appreciate it, man. Like, yo, you're solid, man. You gave me." Wait a minute, I'm talking to a robot. Like, what? Like, okay, all right. I'm talking to the robot like he's really real. Okay.
He ain't gonna reply.
Okay.
He ain't gonna shake your hand. He ain't gonna give you a high five unless you tell him to give you a
Yeah,
high five. He's just gonna stand there and say, kind of in his mind, kind of waiting for a next command. Like that. That's
pretty much. Is it?
okay. So on this island, they go through some misadventures. They fall into a trap. Someone dug a pit, I guess, to capture something, and Mac makes it out, and the robot's in there, and he's like, "Oh, that's right. Hold on, jump up." And GI robot jumps out of the pit in one fail thing, almost like Body Man. It makes the jump out. They're going on another point. I guess they're going through waters like swampland or quicksand or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking wise, GI robot on its own kind of grabs Mac and holds him one-handed, but and he's in full combat gear, and holds Mac above his head, kind of still keeps walking towards the shoreline, and tosses him so he lands on the shore and is like, "Oh man, you saved me." "Oh, wait a minute. Jump. And once again, he jumps out the quicksand in one fail swoop. I'm like, and just blank stare, just looks at him because he's a robot. You're not going to get any facial emotion. Like GI robot is, he's depicted of having more of a humanoid face with the eyes and where the mouth and the nose should be. And that's later on. Those are different versions of them. The original version was just like a cylinder, round face, and two slots where the eyes would be. Right? It looks like a giant tube with eyes. Those good old TV tubes.
Yep.
That's it. That's all we're getting. And he's just looking at him like, okay.
Emotionless, just very, very just steel pan because he's made of metal, but just straightforward. That's all he was.
It's true. It's true. And then, they get, within the story, they're going through this island trying to figure out where they're at. They get their bearings. And what's this island? Like all of a sudden, they're just seeing big, weird things. And out of nowhere comes a reasonable facsimile, I imagine, Triceratops.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Like, and when I say facsimile, like it looks like it, but it's not it, right? So it comes out and purple, charging towards them, and Mac pulls out the bazooka. Now, usually using a bazooka is a two-man job. One man will sit down, aim the bazooka, the other one loads it, taps him on the head when he's clear and good to fire. Right. So Mac and GI robot go through this. One pulls out the bazooka, and GI robot loads it and taps him on the head, but because he doesn't know his own strength, it's like not a tap, it's more like a heavy-handed metal knock on a metal helmet. It's like bang, bang. He's like, okay, got it. You're clear. He's like, I couldn't miss that noise for nothing. Shoots the bazooka and takes out the Triceratops that was reasonable facsimile Triceratops that was charging him, and saved the day. So now they're realizing they're on an island that's uncharted, and it seems to be a lot of monsters around, and they just really call it Monster Island. Very similar to Marvel Savage Land. Now, last year, or maybe the year before, we didn't do it for Remembrance Day, but we did talk about Warlord by DC Comics. And he went through Portal and ended up on, I guess, the inner Earth, so to speak. And you can go back and you can watch that episode. I like that character still, Morgan, so Warlord. And he was in this world where it was like, magic, monsters, technology. So there was swords, there was, guns, there was magic. So it was a mismatch of all of that. Pretty much, it was like Eternia if it was inside the Earth. Okay, and now we're on Monster Island, and I don't really remember hearing Monster Island too many times. Present day within DC. So this, I don't know what came first, if it was Monster Island or Savage Land that came first. Y'all out there, y'all can let me know. It's just a random question or thought like that. But this is where they're at in the story. Now, even though he appeared in these comic books, he didn't have an ongoing series. It was just very like short stories within these. So, you would see him, as I said, in Star Spangled War stories. Thank you. Excuse me. And Weird War. So Weird War was another one that you would see a version of G.I. Robot in, and you show up here and there. But I like the idea that it was the two. It wasn't just a robot by himself. Later on they refer to him as an android. But at the beginning, I'd say full out robot, full out machine, programmed, created by man with his handler. And his handler was that soldier.
Right.
So they did have other adventures after that. And I know wrapping up this, so they run into enemy troops? No. But then near the end, they figure, okay, we have an idea where we're going. We have to get off this island. And this is where he's using G.I. Robot to his best abilities. So Mac turns around and says, hey, we got to swim this way to get off island. And hopefully someone will see us and have our rendezvous this way. So he gets on G.I. Robot's back and says, all right, start swimming. And he goes, I'm just going to stay here. And as you're a robot, you have you're never going to get tired. So you're just going to keep on swimming, and I just got to hold on. And there we go. And they finally got picked up by just some civilians that were in a fishing boat, way offshore, like miles away. The thing is, they never got a good look at G.I. Robot because he was in the water. He was covered in mud and muck. So they pull him aboard, but they didn't get a good look. So the way I'm looking at it is Mac had to somehow camouflage his face, because keep in mind, no matter what, G.I. Robot is still a secret Pentagon project. Can't have people going, oh, what the heck is that?
Right.
Luckily, back then, as now, technology was for what it was for general people. There was no cell phones. There was no social media. There was nothing along those lines that someone can just go click and up to the World Wide Web like we do today. So that is the origin nutshell story of G.I. Robot. We don't see how he gets created. We just see him created. His purpose is just to be out there, because the whole idea was to make more, if this was successful, more soldiers like that. So this way we'd have more robots in the field than actual human soldiers who take down on casualties. And of course, if it's a robot, it doesn't need to rest, doesn't need to sleep, doesn't need to eat. It just keeps going. So we're enemy forces say, hey, we got to take a break because we're tired. Robots would catch you. Once again, we've all seen Terminator. And to follow that up, I'll say this as a side note. I know we're doing a lot of these stories for Remembrance Day. And thank you all those in the military who have served in the military and who will serve in the military in the future. What I've noticed over the time is DC really had the cornerstone of all these military books. DC Comics. Not really many Marvel, story, not as diverse as DC was at the time. So I think that was interesting that DC really went that route with the war comics, and Marvel didn't go that way. But usually Marvel likes to be real world. Like, in Marvel, there is New York City, there is Montreal, there is Toronto. And if you look in DC, there's Gotham, Metropolis, Star City.
Yeah.
These are places that exist in the DC world, not in the real world. So, Rod, that's my rundown of, the first. I mean, I know there's more, but we're only talking about the first. So I will talk about it, of G.I. Robot.
So, you know what? It reminds me when you see, because you said a good point earlier about the facial structure and how his face was very, his eye socket kind of scenario. It gave me the feel like the Bicentennial, Robin Williams Bicentennial.
Yes.
So it gave me that similarity type of visual. So at least it was a good way of, because of Bicentennial, seeing that, it gave me, a good adaptation of what I can see and how realistic the whole concept can be. And I was like, okay, that's why when I read through it, I realized this is kind of looking and kind of reminding me of something. And then I clued into Bicentennial, like, okay. I'm like, okay, I see what you guys are doing. But that's before Bicentennial, so that's a bigger joke. But the fact is, seeing that gave me a good perspective of saying, like, you know what, this is one of these plausible type of storylines that could actually work. And again, like, what we do? We love to have, we like to bring characters and have the ability to say, what if? We like to give you that what if type of, variation. And I feel that this is a what if variation that can work. I have my thoughts. Barry has his thoughts, and we'll tell you how we're going to do it. But yeah, let's go.
Let's go. So let's get down to a couple scenarios. So Rod, here's my first question for you.
Mm-hmm.
How would you see GI Robot today? Like what would you look for? Would you, as a famous question knows, as longtime fans or listeners would know, or thank you very much for being there. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Don't let the show be a secret. Rod, how would you see this coming about? Would it be live action? Would it be animated? Maybe it's a different way? How would you go about this?
So, if you've been watching us and been sticking with us, you know how my mind kind of rolls with something when there's a potential to have opportunity to be very creative. I would always try to go animated, go some cartoons on that aspect. But this is one that I actually would like to be live because of the Bicentennial. Because of Bicentennial, I would like to have it more. I would like to have it. I basically want it to be a real life rendition. Now, how would that be? This is because if you ever watch Bicentennial, the actor who's portraying that is Robin Williams. Rest in peace. You can see Robin Williams in that face. You can see the makeup of the whole structure of his face made out of that. So because of that, you can still see your actor. You can still have some realism in there. So I would like to be live on that. I would definitely like it to be kept in the same time era. I wouldn't want this one to be. I want this to be. This is definitely like a 1950, 60 type of war story. I would like to keep it in that type of vein. I would definitely like to still keep it in that vein. Now, we didn't get into too tough. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but there is a couple other different renditions or different versions. There's G.I. Joe, the G.I. Robot, aka codename Joe. Then when he passes away or dismantled, they made a second one, good amount of issues later on. And that one was called Mac. And then there was Jake 1, Jake 2. And if I remember, I think I thought it was Jake 3. But we're just going to say that different renditions. So in my mind, I would like to, this is where, if we had the ability, I would like to have the fun of having either a two-story, like two stories on this. Maybe a third, depending on the story and the rating, whatever the case be. Definitely kind of have some fun and give what we just saw in the comic books, and have the writers write up like saying they landed in a mysterious island that has some facsimile dinosaurs, which we'll have to get into. Now, the reason why I want to get all to that, I'm talking about 1, 2, and 3, because I would like to have, not say unfortunately, but have it that in the first one and then the second one, you'll have maybe the same actor who portrays it, or first one and then the second one is a different actor. So maybe he passes, like the robot dies and you create another one. All that to say, I would like to keep this something in the family. And by that, I wanted to keep something a little different. I would like to bring someone from the Marvel world over on this side, and he has a sibling. So I would like, follow me on this, I would like to have Chris Helmsworth. I would like to have Chris Helmsworth. Now you'll see why I want to get that. First off, Thor. He's done he's done movies in the realm of being a soldier, so this is not a far-fetched stretch for him to do. We're now going to say we're going to have the writing that's going to be a little bit more. Let's go to the fact that we see the robot on paper, how robotic he is, and at the time, for that time, that writing, that robot would be as futuristic as possible for them to make it, well worth the writing of the story. I would now like to say we still have that timepiece, but you have a robot who is very advanced, who looks very humanoid, still have the features and the mannerism of a robot, but you can say like, yeah, you're a little bit more futuristic than what we saw on paper. Reason why I wanted to have Chris, I want to have Chris to have some fun with that, and just maybe put a little lively, just to make a little, little comical jokes kind of scenario per se, and have him in there. Reason why I want to have him, and then unfortunately, Robot Chris, aka Jor, passes away. We're gonna rebuild him. We're gonna make him stronger. We like the features that we saw of Joe, so we're gonna make him a little bit younger. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna make the next one called Mac, aka Liam Helmsworth.
Oh, oh, oh! You're getting the brothers in there. Okay.
I'm just kidding. That's what I'm saying. I got the family affair. It's a family affair. And bring him in. Now we know Liam was in Expendables. So again, he having the ability to be a soldier, playing out like that, that's not a far-fetched thing. It's something that's plausible. And then now this one is going to be more serious. As much as we want Chris to be serious, we're going to leave Chris to be the jovial one, whatever the case may be. They're realizing, okay, we try to make a little bit humane to be, but we really need to be more serious. Okay, we're going to pull back. It's the data and lore type of connection. We've had lore. He was a little bit too humanized for us. We're just going to have to pull him back a little bit. You need more serious. We're going to have data.
Yeah.
And that will be at least the aspect I want to at least have it in. And then we just go through adventures, go through scenarios, and realize that we're gonna have it that is voice activated in the beginning, and again, the human Mac will have to understand how to be very part of the process is learning how to make the commands, properly, make them on at the right time. And be able to get the functionality out without jump. Like no, I need to jump across here, jump across a ravine. But now he's such a more advanced. He's learning like an AI off of what he's done. So now it's going to be towards the end of it. You're going to realize that you may not have to really tell him as much as the time he was in the quicksand. He was able to basically throw it out. Because you'll see Max say, "I didn't tell him to throw me." Was he thinking is on his own? So you start seeing a little about the element that the handler, if you want to call it that way, start to realize, I think my robot buddy is getting a little bit smart on his own. Do we worry about that? That's episode 3, and then we'll figure that out. There's another Helmsworth, but we'll see if he wants to get in on that one. Wow. But that's basically where I would kind of like roll the dice and writing and go to storyline along that line. Let them have fun with it later.
Okay. I like that. I like where you're going. And I see the fact that you're bringing in all 3 brothers to work on a similar project, or 2 for sure, and maybe a 3rd one to work on this project. And that there would be a unique perspective for marketing and roles, right? Because
right.
We've seen them all in action roles. So touche to you to get into family work. All right. Now, with that said, hey, remember this family over here needs work. So you need us. Call us. Okay.
Let's go.
I'm going to go with this. So I'm with you. I know he's ready to be coming out in Creature Commandos, which is going to be an animated series. I'm not sure if they're going to give him a voice or not, or which version of GI Robot we're going to get, but we are going to get him on the screen. So cartoon-wise, don't need that. A series-wise, no, don't need that. Well, because budget-wise, even if it's like a streaming service, And so to me, I think we do a movie, and I think we can have a lot of aspects in the movie have done well. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
live action movie. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah.
And the stories I want to see is some we know, some we don't know. So one, I want to see the concept of bringing GI Robot to life. I don't need a full out origin story because the
100%.
comic book really just explained that here's a robot, this is what he does, go. But I need a little bit more backstory on Mac and his ranger training to see how his fellow soldiers see him, maybe get a
Right.
better understanding of his position and his personality with his platoon or his troops, even if they're not on a mission, just something. So a little bit, make it a little bit more tangible with the characters. That's one. I want to know more about the doctor who created GI Robot to see his mentality behind it, with his ties with the Pentagon and so forth, and flesh that out a little bit, right? So he's made. Got it. That doesn't have to be long, but I need that in there. Then with GI Robot being around, of course, we need their first mission to end on Monster Island. It's got to go there.
Yeah.
But let's get a little bit more deeper. If Monster Island is out there, like the Savage Line, so some people would know about it. Majority of the world does not. Monster Island is there. The government knows there. Maybe there's things on there they need. So maybe there's like random resource, or raw resources. Maybe there's
Right.
oil on there that should be drilled, and they're trying to get that over. Now, because wherever Monster Island is located, it's maybe out there, so it's in no one's jurisdiction at this point, right? Being it's the Americans, being it's the Germans, so they're all trying to use that either to build bases on it to help attack the other person, or get resources for their military effort, or maybe it's monetary. Maybe there's a big diamond mine out there. We don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where it comes into. And sorry. So I know there's other. I'm gonna sidestep for half a second. So there's another book called The War That Time Forgot. So a lot of GI Robot's missions were in that comic book, also by DC Comics, called The War That Time Forgot. So that's another one to kind of look out to see some of his ventures in there, along with other ones. So with GI Robot, I want to know what is so important. We know what his importance are and what he's supposed to be. On the surface, it's I'm out there to save lives. If there's robots out there, then there's less people out there, less people pass away. Very straightforward. But then Monster Island comes in, then that's what holds my attention. So you're sending an army ranger out there with this robot to field test them on Monster Island. So it comes down to one, the military did not tell Mac that he was going to be on Monster Island. They just flew him out to a location and dropped him out there. So did Mac's superiors have something where they needed confirmation saying, hey, there's rumors that someone saw something like a giant bird, almost like a pterodactyl. No, that can't exist. But we're going to send someone out there to see and do two birds with one stone. Field test GI Robot, and of course, ascertain if the information we've heard back about this island, are they rumors, superstitious, and people are it's just exaggerating, or are there really monsters there? And then what else is there? Right? Like, the race to the moon was who gets to the moon first to put their flag on there to make it as a foothold to say we made it when we're doing the whole space race, because no one wants to give up land and anything that might come back and bite them in the butt later on. Mm-hmm. So I need to know more of the importance of Monster Island than just an island that has monsters on it. There's got to be a reason, be it if it's to gather information, check resources, and they didn't tell Mac really that at the time. Or maybe they did. Who knows? Right? Like, from when I read the comic book, he didn't know. He just ended up on the island. He's like, what? There's dinosaurs? Let me get back home. And when he gets back home, he has to report on how GI Robot operated. He has to report on what he saw. So that means there is a classified file somewhere. So we need to know the classified adventures that GI Robot and Mac had, their first run, of what they came across. And if you're seeing something there, if Mac survived the first time, they're going to send him back with GI Robot to explore some more. So there's where my whole thing comes into, is that who, what, where, why, the W5 of that island with that pairing. Okay. Why was Mac chosen? Was he maybe didn't have a personality that meshed well with the other soldiers, but his skill set put him above the rest? So maybe he was a bit of a loner. It could lead into that. So for myself, what I'm going to do here is I'll say this. So in the comic book, GI Robot didn't have a voice. The very first one I'm talking about. But he got upgrades to react a certain way. Yeah. I say let's give him a voice. Yeah, maybe the very first The first part, don't give him a voice. The last point, very limited.
Yeah.
And the actor that I'm going to cast here for Mac, who is his Army Ranger, if you look at his face, either, then you'll call out his name in a couple of minutes. Either you're going to laugh at it when you see him because he can be comical, but he's got that chiseled jawline. If he's very serious, if he has a serious expression on his face, he looks like he's about to be a man of action. And I think this can open up a whole, and you've seen him being serious. And people, sometimes he's an actor that flies under the radar, but he's known by everybody at the same time. And his wealth of work is amazing. So here's my thing. This actor who I'm going to call out, I want him to play Mac the soldier. Cool. And I also want him to be the voice for G.I. Robot for when he speaks. So this actor's going to have double duty of doing voiceover and being an actor. Just like how they do for The Simpsons. A guy who does Homer does a whole bunch of Simpsons characters, right? And the person I'm going with for both as a voice and as the soldier is Alan Tudyk. Okay. Right? For those who are listening, watching, he's on the TV show Resident Alien. He's the main cast. He's the main person for Resident Alien. He was Olaf in, was it Frozen?
Frozen. Yep.
Right? He played Hey Hey in Mohana. So he's done a ton of voiceover from comedic to serious. He played a role with Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale. You know, he was the one that was always kind of ready to go crazy and try to fight everybody. And always had to calm him down. He's the hot-tempered one.
Yep.
The redhead one. Okay, so he's been in everything, be it if it's voice work or not. And people don't realize how much voice work he has done. So now if we take him and you look at what he is with his face and his jaw, and it's okay, he can go in there and I can see him playing a ranger. So, and here's another part. I know reality he's a little bit older than what you might recruit as a ranger. That's fine. That still goes to the story. Maybe he's up there, so he's gone through a full military career and he's up there in the end. He's got that skill set. They're giving him that special mission. You're not going to give it to the newbie. So
100%.
With Alan, he can play off the comedic aspects of these bad situations, make it a little bit more lighthearted. And at the same time, he can be very serious, convey that. And then, of course, if he's doing the voice work for the robot, when they do give him a voice later on in one of these upgrades throughout the movie, hey, here we are now. This is going to add a little bit more to the repertoire. And of course, it gets Alan a double paycheck. Double paycheck for you, Alan. I got you. Double paycheck for you. For doing double duty, double a paycheck. Okay. Talk to your manager and your agent. Make it happen. So this is who I see for G.I. Robot.
Okay.
Now, here's the beauty of it. We know at one point, Mac he's human. He's going to hit an age where he's not going to be here any longer, and that's fine. But if they bring in somebody else, so the whole thing with the movie is it would go through setting up a quick origin, getting him in there with this whole thing, trying to fight back the Germans over Monster Island. Maybe there's something there that he left there but is needed. G.I. Robot goes through other missions. He gets moth because Alan Tudyk, playing Mac, retires from an Army Ranger. You know, they mothball the original G.I. Robot. And then for whatever reason, he's got to come back more, maybe in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, whatever it is. And Alan is, Tudyk is, well, maybe he's passed away. It could be, why not Alan Tudyk? I mean, the Mac, who he plays,
the character
would have passed away in the storyline. But you still get Alan Tardyk's voice as G.I. Robot. And he can do the voice work when they give him a new Ranger to work with.
Yeah. Think of it like the Winter Soldier, in a sense. Keeps coming out.
Yeah.
You need him, pull him out. I see what you're saying.
Absolutely. And then if we want to go even further, and that might be stretched from the storyline, is we know that they see him as G.I. Robot, but later on they refer to him as an android. And what classifies as an android is it has to have some biological material on the inside of it. So if you took Mac's brain and said, hey, we need someone that has a certain set of skills and knows the island inside and out. Well, Mac is up there in his days, his body is not there, but his mind is sharp, and only he knows Monster Island like nobody else knows Monster Island. Mac, here's the deal. For your country, you've served your country, you've been very patriotic. Would you, your body's about to fail out on you, right? Like whatever you have, you got a couple of days left. Would you want to go on one last mission? Would you allow us to transplant your brain from your human body into GI robot and then send you back for that last mission to find whatever is on Monster Island that is so important that might have some underground effects, like Shadow War, so to speak. And I don't mean like shadows coming out in war, but I mean, undercover Cold War. And we need you to stop that. You're the only person that knows this inside and out. GI robot needs someone to handle it. But now if we combine the two and put your mind, which is still sharp, out of your agent body into GI robot and send GI robot back to Monster Island, we'll leave you there as our first line of defense. Are you good with that?
Okay.
Yes, sir. And of course, now with, you still have Alan Tudyk, but now he goes from first part of that movie, be it if it's stretched out or not, to sort of first part of the movie, he being a living soldier, to a little bit in the future, and he's an aged soldier. And then you put his mind back in there, it's still his voice.
Right.
You're not going to be thrown off. Whatever voice he creates for that character, it's still Alan Tudyk, beginning to end. And that's how he goes on that last mission. And, mission can end. They can get what they got to get, or he stops what he got to stop. Maybe he's there. He's bent and dented and stuff like that, and you see the camera just panning away and he's standing on the beach just saluting, and that's it. And then what happens to him next, we don't know, but the army knows he's there and they know he's going to patrol and keep things all going for as long as his batteries go. And it still leaves it open for further adventures of GI Robot with Alan Tudyk doing the voice.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. I like that.
Dug deep.
I like that. No, that was good. That was good. I like that. I can see again. You're making sure that's there's consistency, and that giving opportunity, that you can make sure that people recognize and just stick with that individual, realizing this actor the same way. Like when we hear Kevin Conroy, that's Batman. Like you don't think anything other. Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool. You just hear it. So no, I see what you're doing. No, good.
So that's my pitch for it. So remember, DC, if you start doing some of these war stories, you got to reach out to the Iconist podcast. You got to let me and Rod know. Remember, the icon is, and this time it's GI Robot. All right, Rod. Any last words before we wrap this one up?
No. Listen, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, comment. Spread the word. Let everybody know that we're out here. If you're enjoying it, don't let it be a secret. Let people know. Let people know.
Exactly. Let the people know. So once again, thank you to all the troops out there for everything you've done for us over the years, for fighting for our freedoms. That's all we got to say. This is why we're doing a whole Remembrance month, but it should be more than a month. Hey, we only get a month, and it's in a cold time. All right, then. So on that note, this whole world was created by a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. Keep on dreaming. Once again, this one's for you, Sean. Oops. I'm not sure if I'm reading right, but we out. You can love me.